Okay, so today we will be discussing about the Russian Revolution in the World History series. Russia, before it was divided in 1990s, comprised of a very vast empire that spanned across Europe and Asia. It was the erstwhile Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The Russian Revolution is a very important event in the world history which has impacted upon the world. Different countries of the world have taken inspiration from the ideals of the Russian Revolution. So, we will be discussing in short the Russian Revolution today as to what was the situation before the revolution, why the revolution took place, what were the events that took place during the revolution. It is a series of events. It's in fact not a single incident. It includes different revolutions that we will be looking at in our presentation today. And finally, we will be looking at what impact it has had on the different countries of the world. So now, let's start discussing the Russian Revolution. So before we start discussing the Russian Revolution, it's important to know about the background, the situation that prevailed in the world, in Europe, before this revolution started. Okay. So in the 19th century, the entire Europe was undergoing social, economic, and political transformation. Normally, what happens during revolution is that the social, economic, and political structure of the society undergoes a transformation because of the demand of the people. And to fulfill those demands, they undertake different type of activities, even violent activities. So in the 19th century, the entire Europe was undergoing social, economic, and political transformation. What was the situation before this revolution? There was rule of old feudal aristocracies. So a group of people who had hereditary rights, they used to be the rulers of the common people. But because of revolutions like the French Revolution, etc., in other part of the Europe, this rule of the old feudal aristocracies was replaced by that of middle class. So there was a shift in the power, and there was ushering of the democracy, we can say, in different parts of the Europe, not in Russia in particular. What was the situation in Russia? In Russia, however, the rule of the old czars, who were the Russian emperors, we can say, that aristocratic rule of czars still continued. And this was unsuited to the needs of the modern times. So when the political system, the social system, and the economic system is not liked by the people, they start revolting against the prevalent system and they try to replace it with a new system of their liking. And therein comes the revolution. So, this was the background that formed the basis for the Russian Revolution. Now, with that background, we can identify certain causes prominently that were the causes for the Russian Revolution, like the problem of the agriculture and the people involved in agriculture, the farmers, the laborers. Then the labor problem, both in agriculture as well as in the industries, manufacturing, service. In all these sectors, the laborers, they were facing problems. The problem of nationality, we saw that the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic was a vast area encompassing Europe and Asia, and the Tsar in their empire had different nationalities. So the empire spread over different areas like Finland, etc., and the people over there had a nationality different from the people of the Russia. Okay, so there were ethnically there were diverse population. So there was a conflict between people of different nationalities. That created problem and it became a cause for Russian Revolution. There likewise there was student radicalism that went into a formation of different parties, that went into having different ideologies. Some were moderate, some were no, radical. So this also became a reason for the spread of the revolutionary ideas. Then there was humiliating defeat of the Russia in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 and 1905, which formed the basis for the revolution of 1905 immediately. And there was discontent amongst the people, every section of the people, with the Russian social and political system. We saw in the previous slide itself that the system was not suited to the changing times, whereas in the rest of Europe, there had been transformation from the old aristocratic rule to the rule of the people. So let us now view in a bit detail these different causes. So let's come to the agrarian problem. What sort of condition was prevalent in the agriculture sector of Russia at that time? The people, the peasants, they were poor, definitely. The reason for they being poor was that they had small land holding. So the land holdings were small, naturally the output would be small. They did not have any capital to input, and therefore they could not get more output from the small land holdings. Also, there were heavy dues for decades. So, a person who was engaged in agriculture had dues, had loan, and he could not repay his loan, and as a result, he would remain a peasant under the mastery of aristocratic rulers for long, for entire life period. Many peasant revolutions also took place, but they were suppressed. And when a revolution is suppressed, it becomes a ground for furthering of the revolutionary tendencies. So there was food shortage due to various reasons like harsh growing climate as a result of the cold climate of the Russia, being a country situated towards the North Pole. Then there were series of costly wars that proved to be a drain on the resources. And at the same time, there was population boom. So with small holding, with no capital, with heavy dues, and also with more mouths to be fed, the condition of the peasants was very poor in Russia. And this became a cause of resentment. So this is one of the causes of Russian Revolution and an important one. Then moving towards the industrial sector. The industrialization began late in Russia. Whereas in other parts of the Europe, Germany, France, etc., the industrialization had become uh, prominent before it began in Russia. Now, when the industrialization began, though late in Russia, it spread at a faster rate. However, the capital for the industries came from foreign countries, and there was a competition between the foreign players and the native players, and obviously the native players, they were not strong enough to fight the capital that was coming from the foreign countries. So that led to the resentment among the natives. There was population growth, there was overcrowding. The people who used to work in the factories, they were living in poor living conditions in the society, in the cities. So all these social factors, population, the standard of life, all these caused resentment among the worker population as well. Like the peasants, the workers, they were also burdened by the prevalent social, political, and economic conditions. There was neglect of the conditions of the workers, and also the workers had no political rights, the ruler being the Tsar at that time. So this caused resentment among the workers as well. Now, the third important reason, the cause was nationality problem. Russian Tsars had built a vast empire by conquest of diverse nationalities in Europe and in Asia. So, because of this cultural diversity, there were conflicts. But the cause of the conflict was the policy of imposition of the Russian languages on the non Russian speaking population, which is called by the name Russification. So, this policy of Russification was not taken in a good spirit by the people of different nationalities. They were also trying to shift the demographics, and therefore it caused resentment among the different ethnicities. So the parties of non-Russian nationalities, they began to work to free their lands from the rule of the Tsar. Okay, so this nationality problem was also an important factor that led to the Russian Revolution. Different revolutionary movements were taking place at one place or another. We saw that many peasant revolutions in the past took place, but they were suppressed. So, before the 19th century, there were peasant revolutions, rebellions that were suppressed. The intellectuals of that time, they started preaching their ideas to the peasants. So whenever there is resentment among the people, the intellectuals, they fill the void by bringing to them the ideas of liberation, freedom, equality, fraternity, etc. Going to the people movement, as it is called, was started by the intellectuals. Different political parties were formed, like the Socialist Revolutionary Party, which voiced the demands of the peasantry. Likewise, to voice the demand of the workers, parties like the Russian Social Democratic Party under George Plekhanov was formed in 1883. Likewise, the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party was formed in 1898. This Labour Party was split into two groups, one being called as the Mensheviks, the other being referred to as the Bolsheviks. The Mensheviks was the group in minority, and these differences between these two group of people were basically on how the party should be organized and what discipline should the people in the party follow. For example, the Mensheviks, they said that they favor the participation in the election. So they were more inclined to having an organization and the structure that were prevalent in the other parts of the Europe like Germany, etc. Whereas the Bolsheviks, who were in majority, they did not favor participation in election. Instead, they favored discipline in the party, and they were behind revolution. They did not favor party organized on parliamentary lines. Parliamentary lines was favored by the Mensheviks. And very prominent leader of these Bolsheviks, the group in majority, was none other than Vladimir Lenin. So these were the political developments that were taking place because of the resentment among the peasants and the workers. And we also saw that due to the nationality problems, they were also trying to free their land from the Tsarist rule. Likewise, there were different strikes organized by the workers, there were student riots, and there were assassinations made by the terrorists. So all sort of these revolutionary approaches were undertaken by the different group of people that formed the basis of the Russian Revolution. So, culminating in 1905 Russian Revolution, or these backgrounds that we have talked about, that we have the causes that we have seen, all these led to the first Russian Revolution that was in 1905. But a revolution needs some immediate trigger, which was to be found on 9th of January 1905 in what is termed as the Bloody Sunday. So it was a day on which there were demonstration by the peaceful demonstrators. However, the ruler, they ordered massacre of these peaceful demonstrators. So the demonstrators, along with their family, the wives, the children, etc., they were massacred in the square before the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. This massacre sparked the Russian Revolution of 1905. This became an immediate cause for the outlet of the resentment that had been among the peasants, the workers, the people of different nationalities. There were worker strikes throughout the country as a result of this bloody Sunday massacre, and the revolt, it spread to non-Russian parts of the empire as well. So we see that different areas got involved into the revolution, different groups of people got involved in the Russian Revolution of 1905. Not only this, many functionaries from the navy, from the army, they were also influenced by this revolutionary fervor. So many naval ships, they developed revolutionary sentiment and animosity towards the aristocratic officer class. So this picture depicts the Potemkin uprising, wherein the sailors, they revolted on the immediate question of getting bad food, but in spirit they were supporting the revolutionary fervor. Okay, there were formation of workers councils which were called as Soviets. So political development also took place alongside. The first workers council acting as a strike committee was formed at Ivanova Voznesensk. Likewise, the St. Petersburg Soviet was also formed. So this was the political development that took place in 1905 as a result of the immediate trigger being provided by the Bloody Sunday massacre. So as a result of these revolutionary tendencies spreading across Russia and across different groups of the people, including the armed forces, the Tsar of the time, Nicholas II, he declared a manifesto known as October Manifesto, which sought to grant freedom of speech, press, and association in order to placate the resentment that was growing among the different groups of the people. And consequently, the first imperial state Duma was convened by the then Tsar. Duma is a parliament of Russia. It is an elected body which has the power to make law. Okay, so this parliament was summoned. However, it was dismissed within 75 days. So the elections took place for the second parliament, second Duma in 1906. However, we will see the developments later on. In 1917, there was second Russian Revolution, and during that time, this imperial state Duma was dissolved, and it was overtaken by the Russian provisional government. Okay, so these were the political developments that took place in the aftermath of the 1905 Bloody Sunday massacre that proved to be the immediate cause of the 1905 Russian Revolution. So now, like we have seen the conditions prevailing before 1905 that led to the 1905 Russian Revolution, we in this slide will be looking at the situation that was prevalent pre 1917 Russian Revolution. In 1905, as we just saw, the peasants, workers, soldiers, non-Russian nationality people, they all came in close contact with the revolutionaries. So the revolutionary ideas, they spread far and wide. During this 1905 revolution, after that, in 1914, Russia decided to enter into the World War I. Already they had suffered because of the Russo-Japanese War. There was resentment because of that. And yet again in 1914, Russia entered into the World War First. Alongside, there were also the royal family concerns. Now, all was not good in the ruler's family. It's well known that under the influence of one Rasputin, the Tsarina, who had a German origin, had taken certain decisions that was not liked by the nobility, and then there were certain events which has been documented in a movie as well. So all these things was not liked by the people in general of Russia, and there was resentment against the ruler's family as well. At the same time, administratively, there was corruption, as a result of which as a result of all these factors, there was shortage of bread. And whenever there is shortage of bread, it propels the women in particular to rise in revolt against the prevalent rulers. Okay, so involvement of the woman also started on the question of shortage of bread. And all these factors were the reasons behind the discontent that was spreading and that had spread amongst the different groups of the people across the Russian Empire. And therefore, in 1917, there came the second revolution, which is termed as the February Revolution, which, according to the Russian Julian calendar, which was followed in Russia, occurred on 23rd of February, whereas according to the Gregorian calendar, it began on 8th of March 1917. So the February Revolution, it began on March 8, 1917. Yet it is called as February Revolution because according to the Julian calendar, it began on February 23rd. So this February Revolution, the background of which we have already seen, was marked by demonstration by the working class women over the question of shortage of bread. There were general strikes of the workers. Peasants were already not happy. Soldiers were also getting involved, and all these things led to the capture of the St. Petersburg and Moscow by the revolutionaries. The Tsar had to give up his throne and go away from the rule. And people mainly had these four demands. They demanded peace, they demanded land to the tillers, they demanded control of the industry by the workers, and they demanded equal status for the non-Russian nationalities. See, the problem of peasants, the problem of workers, the problem of non-nationality, non-Russian nationalities. These were all the causes behind the revolutions, and that it was demanded that land should be given to the tiller. The serfdom had been abolished way back in Russia in 1861. However, in spite of the abolition of the serfdom, the condition of the peasant was not good. We had seen that because of certain factors, they were continuing to remain poor and also under the burden of loan and dues. So they demanded land to be given to the tillers, and ultimately they demanded peace. So these demands were made by the people during the Russian Revolution. Various events took place. The first provisional government was formed, which led to the dissolution of the Duma, and this first provisional government was formed under Kerensky. Kerensky didn't implement the previous demands that we had seen in the previous slide. He, however, opposed violent social revolution. So he was a moderating tendency. And Lenin, who had exiled from Russia to Switzerland, he returned from his exile in Switzerland during that period. So this 1917 February Revolution. It marked the end of the Romanov dynasty and centuries of the Russian imperial rule. We had seen that the Tsar had abdicated his throne. Now, during the 1917, once again in the month of November, according to the Gregorian calendar, however, it being 25th of October, according to the Russian Julian calendar, therefore it is called as October Revolution. So, during the month of October, according to the Russian Julian calendar, this October Revolution took place in 1917 again. And what happened during this period was that on November 6th and 7th of 1917, or October 24 or 25th according to the Julian calendar of Russia, the leftist revolutionaries led by Bolshevik party leader Vladimir Lenin. Bolshevik was the party in majority who did not favor the organization being based on the lines of other European countries. They believed in discipline and they also supported revolution. Okay, so what they did, they launched a bloodless coup against the Duma's provisional government under Kerensky. So that led to the fall of Kerensky government, who was moderate in tendency. At the same time, the sailors, they occupied the Winter Palace, the seat of the power in Russia. There was return of Leon Trotsky, who was head of the Petrograd Soviet, which were the Council of the Workers, and all Russian Congress of Soviets assumed full political power. So the provisional government, it was uh, put to an end, and the political power was assured by this Congress of the Soviets, and prominently the leaders being Lenin and Trotsky, etc. at that time. At the same time, now it was decided that Russia should withdraw from the war because it was not going on well. Estate of the landlords, church, and the Tsar were confiscated. The lands were transferred to the peasant societies to be allotted to the peasants' families. Land to the tiller was the demand. So the land was being confiscated and it was being allotted to the peasants' families. Control of the industries was transferred to the shop committees of the workers. So all these demands that were being made by the different sections of the people were being implemented by this government that had toppled the provisional government. Okay, and there was the policy of nationalization of the means of productions that was taken all across the Russia when the Bolsheviks came in power. So during this October Revolution, following all that we had seen in the previous slide, there was declaration of the rights of the people, which included the right of self-determination of all the nationalities. So they had tried to address all the causes, the peasant cause, the workers' labor problems, the problems of the different nationalities, by this declaration of the rights of the people. A council of people's commissars headed by Lenin was formed, which became the seat of power. And this is termed as beginning of the era of socialism. Nationalization of the means of production, distribution of the resources between the people, giving importance to the work, paying according to the work one does. So all these things started after the dissolution of the first provisional government. And there was annulment of all the unequal treaties which was imposed on China by Tsar. So the relationship with the China also started going to get better. So however, during this October Revolution, the civil war also broke out in the territory of the Russian Empire. So civil war broke out after the Bolshevik Revolution of October. So it is termed as Red Army versus White Army. The Red Army, composed of the peasants and workers who fought for the Lenin's Bolshevik government. Whereas the White Army, it was represented by the group of allied forces including the monarchists, capitalists, army officers of the fallen Tsar, and supporters of democratic socialism. Red Army versus the White Army. Red Army being the supporters of the Lenin government, and White Army being the supporters of the Tsars who were in their service earlier. Okay. So the Romanovs, after this civil war, the Bolsheviks were in power and they executed the royal family. There is also a movie made on this on July 16, 1918. The Russian Civil War ended in 1923 with the Red Army claiming victory. That means the supporter of the Lenin's Bolshevik government that comprised of peasants and workers, that Red Army, it won the Civil War and thereby was the establishment of the Soviet Union. Okay, so this is what happened in the aftermath of the October Revolution of 1917. So, having seen the different events that had taken place during the course of the Russian Revolution right from 1905 to 1917, now let us proceed to see what consequences this Russian Revolution has had on the entire world. Firstly, there was overthrow of autarky, autocracy, aristocracy, and also the power of church. There was resentment among the people against these institutions because they were not fair enough and they were becoming a problem in the life of the people, the peasant, the worker, the peoples of different nationalities, women, etc. Ultimately, the revolution occurred and it overthrew the aristocracy and the power of church as well was declined. The formation of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics took shape. There was realization of the socialism, socialist ideals, wherein there was abolition of the concept of private property in the means of production. It was nationalized. The motive of private profit eliminated from the system of production. So it was now based on distribution according to the needs of the people. Economic planning took over. So they would be making long term, short term, intermediate term plans and executing those plans accordingly. The right to work was recognized and dignity was associated with labor. Education was given priority and that people of different nationalities other than the Russians, they were also given autonomy. We had seen that they were trying to free their land. Now, as a consequence of the revolution, they were given autonomy within the USSR. Russia became major power in the world. There was start of Cold War with the United States. The formation of Communist International took place because this idea of socialism, communism, it spread across the world into different countries and the people, like-minded people, they formed this for Communist International. The principle of universality and internationalism also took shape as a result of Russian Revolution, and it was an end to imperialism. So, because of all these important changes that took place in the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, it had its influence on the different countries of the world. It influenced the independence movements of the countries, especially the Asia and Africa. And it gave importance to the idea of social and economic equality through planned economic development. So it gave an ideal, it gave a methodology, and it also gave certain principles based on which the system of the country, the governance of any country could be done. So this is in short about the Russian Revolution.